Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be tier ranking every fantasy romance book I read this year. Alright guys, I have a feeling this is going to be a longer video, so I'm going to try to get through this intro pretty quickly. So I am going to be tier ranking over 40 fantasy romance books that I read this year. I will give a very brief idea of what each book is about. It will be completely spoiler free, and then I will explain why I put it on whatever tier I decided. Now there are a few rereads in here, but most of these were new release fantasy romances that came out in 2023. And I am so excited. Tier rank videos are some of my favorite to film and to watch, so this should be really fun. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's get into the tier rank. All right, guys, welcome to the tier rank. So I'm gonna go over the different tiers. So first up, we have Perfection. I loved everything about this book. It is epic. Then we have Amazing. It was probably a 5-star read. I'm definitely going to reread it in the future, and I loved it. Then we had Okay, which meant I probably had a good time while I was reading it. However, it's not my absolute favorite. Then we have Not For Me, where this book didn't work for me, but I think it has potential, and I think other people might enjoy it. Personally, there's just something in it that I didn't love. And then last up, we have Nope. Just Nope. Didn't like it. Don't think other people will like it. This book did not work for me at all. So these are in no particular order, but we are going to start off with Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This seems to be a book people either love or hate. We're following Alex Stern. She is a girl that's able to see ghosts that she calls Greys, and she is working for a secret society at Yale University, trying to make sure that other secret societies in Yale University are using occult magic safely. So she's kind of like a police officer of these secret societies, if that makes any sense. Anyway, it's very dark. It has some interesting writing, but I actually liked it. I'm going to put this with okay. I enjoyed it. It's just not a book that I find myself gravitating to that I want to reread all the time. It was okay. Then we have, actually, I'm going to skip that because I'll find the first book. So next we have House of Beating Wings. So I have a lot of mixed feelings on this book. I actually think I'm going to put this for not for me. However, I do think so many people out there will love this book. Personally, I just haven't felt the need to continue with the series, which makes me think that I didn't love this book as much as I thought when I first read it. But this is a very atmospheric world, very reminiscent of like Italy. We're following this girl that is half fae, half human, and she's kind of looked down on by the rest of the fae that live in her community. And she's able to talk to these like evil sea beasts that everyone is afraid of, but for some reason, like they get along with her. And anyway, she wants to marry the future king, and she ends up finding the sorceress that tells her if she is able to track down these magical birds, then she will be able to marry like this guy of her choosing. Kind of. There's more going on than that, but that's a very simple version. But yeah, I didn't love the romance, and I don't remember very much about it, and I probably won't be continuing with the series anytime soon, so I'm going to say not for me for that one. And then let's go to ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, one of my favorites. I reread it early this year in January. ACOTAR is going to go with Amazing because it sets up the rest of that series, and I love ACOTAR with all of my heart. It is my favorite fantasy romance. It is so good. And then obviously A Court of Mist and Fury is going in perfect. It is my favorite book of all time. I still get butterflies when I read that book. Rhysand, Farah, I love them. They are epic love story perfection. It's just found family. You have the inner circle, and anytime I'm really upset and sad, I always reread A Court of Mist and Fury. It's so good. Then we have A Court of Wings and Ruin, which I also think is amazing. It has my favorite scene in all of ACOTAR with the High Lords council meeting. I just think everything that goes down in that High Lords meeting is fantastic. So I loved the conclusion. So those are the first 3 books. Then we have A Court of Frost and Starlight. You all knew it was going to happen. It's going in Nope. I hate that book. I hate that book so much. So much. I could rant for hours on the reasons why I hate that book, but it is, I hate it. I hate it with a burning passion. So that's going in nope. I'm very sorry if I offended people that love the book, but it just, nothing about it did I enjoy. Actually, that's a lie. I did love the scene with Cassian decorating the house with Farah while they were drinking wine. I do love that, but that's the only scene in that book that I liked. And next up, we have A Court of Silver Flames. So I reread this in January, and I liked it a little bit more on my reread. I still think there are some like comical inconsistencies, but overall, like, it's Cassian. I love Cassian. So I'm going to put this with amazing. It's not quite perfect. Like, I definitely saw some issues with the book. And Nesta is not my favorite character. Nesta gets on my nerves 90% of the time. I understand she's gone through trauma, but still, the way she treated Farah when in our first 3 books, she was so mean to Farah. And Farah didn't deserve it. So yeah, definitely. I'll put it in amazing, but had I done this tier rank last year, it probably would have been in the not for me category. So it definitely went up. And next up, we have A Court of Blood and Bindings. This is also going in amazing. I loved this intro into the Fae Isles world. So if you're unfamiliar with A Court of Blood and Bindings, we are following this human girl that is living on this island, and the humans are controlled by the Fae, and the Fae are controlled by the mother, who's like the most powerful Fae. And the mother's right-hand man is known as the Silent Death because he kills people and they die without even uttering a single scream. So anyway, our main character wakes up and her entire community is on fire. All of her neighbors have fled, and standing above her is the Silent Death himself. And the story goes from there. And I love the hero in this. He isn't able to use his voice, but then our main character ends up teaching him a form of sign language, and their romance is just, it is perfect. So I can't wait to continue with this series. I'm waiting for book 3 to come out via audio, but I'm loving it so far. Next up, we have A Heart of Blood and Ashes. This is going to go in perfect. This is one of my top favorite fantasy romance books. It is so enemies to lovers, and I love the heroine in this book. So we're following this barbarian, kind of like a prince. He finds out that his parents have both been murdered, and he thinks he knows who was the culprit. And it's the kind of like princess of a rival group of people. So he goes to kill her, and she's like, hey, wait a minute. We can help each other out. I hate my family. You want revenge. If we marry each other, that's gonna like piss off everyone. So she is like so cunning, and I love how she's able to kind of outwit everyone, and their romance is just great. But I really love the heroine. She also, I forget exactly what happened to her, but she can't run or use her legs, and the barbarian clan is very like, you have to be able to do those things. But she finds her own way of like making it work, and I loved her so much. Next up, let's do The Coven by Harper L. Woods. This is gonna move down to okay, only because I forget a lot of what happened, and the sequel has been out for a while, and once again, I haven't felt the need to pick it up. But The Coven is a witch, kind of vampire type romance. We're following this girl whose mother was part of the Coven, and the Coven is a group of witches that are actually like skeletons but aren't able to like pass on. And these skeleton witches have these things known as vessels, which are essentially vampires that are used to carry out their bidding. So our main character ends up being approached by one of these vessels, who's actually named Gray. He's the headmaster of a school that is run by the Coven. And he's like, hey, I'm either going to tell everyone that you have a secret brother that we want to kill, or you can come with me, go to this school, make the Coven people happy, and go from there. So I actually really liked the ending of this book. I did not see it coming. I'm normally pretty good at guessing endings, so I enjoyed it. It's just, I haven't felt the need to pick up book 2. So it's going to go with okay. I guess it really depends on what happens in book 2, if it like moves up or not. And next up we have Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I thought this was really good. I'm putting this in amazing. I love it. It really changed directions from Ninth House. I feel like Ninth House was very, very dark, very gothic. There's a very upsetting thing that happens at the beginning of Ninth House, which I wasn't a fan of. But Hellbent has more of that family connection. It also has a little bit more lore, and it just felt more of like Six of Crows. It had like a heist element to it that I really enjoyed. So Hellbent is actually amazing, and I really cannot wait for the next book to come out. Hopefully it doesn't take another 3 years, because she's taking her time publishing these books. So let's hope. And next up we have Bonded by Thorns. This is a Why Choose Beauty and the Beast retelling. And it was okay. I'm gonna keep it at okay only because I feel like this first book was very much a setup book. We're following this girl, I'm pretty sure her name's Briar Rose, and everyone thinks her father is crazy, similar to the original Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. And her father ends up going missing. She goes to find her father, ends up in the Fae realm, finds out that these 4 Fae princes are keeping her father hostage, and she negotiates with them and says, will you take me instead? So all of these princes also kind of correlate with the seasons, and they turn into beasts based on their seasons. So there's like a fall beast, a summer beast. Anyway, the romance didn't really start to happen in book 1. There were some spicy scenes, but they were between the men, not with the main character like involved. So yeah, I just kind of wanted a little bit more of a romance. But I will be continuing with this series definitely because I was enjoying it and it was really fun. So we will see what happens. And next up we have Serpent and the Wings of Night. I still need to read the sequel, Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. However, I love Serpent and the Wings of Night. It's definitely going with amazing. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. However, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was going to be a little bit more romance forward, and this was so much action. We're following this girl who is a human, but she was found by the king of the vampires, who took her to his kingdom and raised her as his ward. However, she's grown up amongst vampires, so when she comes of age, she decides she's going to compete in this tournament known as the Kajari, where she will fight to the death against other vampires in the hopes of being granted a wish from the goddess Nyaxia. So while all of this is going on, there's also like an enemies to lovers story that's kind of taking place. So I really enjoyed it. I'm excited for Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, and Carissa Broadbent is one of my favorite fantasy romance authors. 6 Scorched Roses, which I'm going to talk about, I'll just talk about that now, is going in perfection. It was one of my top 10 favorite books of the year. It is a novella that is set in the same world as The Crowns of Nyaxia. However, it can be read as a standalone, and we are following this girl named Lilith who knows that she is going to die. She has this disease, and she's just kind of waiting for her intimate death. However, there's also a curse on her people that is causing them to essentially wither away into dust. So before she dies, she really wants to find the cure to this curse. And she knows that there is a vampire named Vaine who has recently moved into the town. So she approaches him and says, I will give you 6 magical roses for 6 vials of your blood in order to try to find a cure with your blood. And the story goes from there, and it is the best novella I've ever read. You need to read it if you haven't yet. It is so, so good. So that is definitely going in perfect. Let's see. And next up we have Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. I think this is actually going to go with not for me because I have no interest in picking up the sequel. And me and Laura Thalassa, I don't think we get along. I just haven't loved any book I've read by her. I read Pestilence and I rated that like 2 stars. I didn't like it. And then the Rhapsodic series, I ended up DNFing because some of the characters, the way they were written, was not good. And overall the story just felt very similar to ACOTAR, and I wasn't as invested. So yeah, I don't think Bewitched just didn't work for me, unfortunately. So that's gonna go for not for me. I think when I originally rated it like 3.5 stars, but I probably drop it down to like 2.5 now. And next up we have What Lies Beyond the Veil. So this is by Harper L. Woods, and I really enjoyed this. So I have this here because I read What Lies Beyond the Veil was a reread, and then I read the next 2 books in the series. I didn't include them, I don't think, in this list, but overall I'm gonna put this series with okay. There are definitely issues with it. So I loved the first book, What Lies Beyond the Veil. It was a little predictable, but I still really enjoyed it. The second book has more of that enemies to lovers romance. I loved the second book, possibly more than the first book. The third book is literally just these 2 people being tortured for the majority of the book. And it got so repetitive to the point I just didn't care that they were getting tortured because it was happening so often. So I didn't love the third book, which is why this got dropped to okay instead of amazing. But yeah, and I haven't gone on with the series. I'm pretty sure the 4th book has been released. So that also. All right. Next up, Manacle. That is perfect. It is my favorite book of the year. If you have not read it, you need to read it, especially if you are a fan of Harry Potter and The Handmaid's Tale. It is essentially what would have happened if Voldemort won the war against the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter was killed, and Voldemort has started a breeding program where Hermione, who has been captured by Voldemort, is now going to be given over to his right-hand man, the High Reeve, in the hopes that he will impregnate her and cause Hermione to have a magical baby. We find out the High Reeve is actually Draco Malfoy, and it is their romance, and it is intense, and it is dark, and it is emotional, and it is the best romance I've ever read. And that last line still makes me ugly cry. So it's so good. Definitely read it if you haven't yet. It is perfect. And next up, we are going to do Fourth Wing. I don't know where to put Fourth Wing. It's between amazing and perfect. I feel like if I put it in perfect, a lot of you are going to get really mad at me because there are definitely issues with it. But I really liked it. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to put it in perfect. I loved this as the start of a new adult fantasy romance series. It has dragons. It has a badass heroine. And I love the romance. It has a shadow daddy. I live for that. Like, I loved all of the elements of this book. Yes, the characters did seem a little bit younger than they are supposed to be in the book, and it did have a couple pacing issues, but I loved it so much. So Fourth Wing, I'm going to put in perfect. Iron Flame, another story that I will talk about. The Book of Azreal is a tough one. I think I'm going to put that with okay. I enjoyed it. I think it was longer than it needed to be, and I actually forget a lot of the main story. I know we were following this girl that her sister is about to pass away, and she begs the universe for help. This demon shows up and is like, hey, I'll save your sister, but I'm going to turn you into a very powerful monster type being, and you're going to be my personal slave. And she's like, I don't care to save my sister. So both her and her sister have this immortality. However, I believe her name is Diana, I could be wrong, now has to work for this demon and do everything he says. So he requests that she find the Book of Azreal, and in searching for this book, she accidentally kills this angel. And by killing an angel, it kind of like sends an alert to this god planet where this god hears it and shows up and is like, hey, you just killed my angel friend. You are now my prisoner. We are going to find this book together, and then like I'm going to kill you. And it is their romance. And it was good. I enjoyed it. The ending definitely caught me by surprise. But there were parts of it that I felt really bored while I was reading. So I'm going to stick this with okay. However, I'm definitely going to read the sequel very, very soon. And very similar to the Umbra King, but I did like the Umbra King's romance a little bit more. So I'm going to put that in amazing. We're following this girl that sees her twin sister be killed and is out for revenge. However, she hasn't been able to find the killer, so she instead uses her magical abilities that allow her to see kind of like the auras of people to determine who's evil and who's not evil. And then she stalks the people with the evil auras until they are about to commit a heinous act, and then she murders them. So she's kind of like a vigilante, but then she gets sent to the prison realm because she gets caught killing all of these people. And when she gets there, she finds out that the person in charge of the prison realm is actually the person that murdered her sister. And the story goes from there. It's their romance. And it was really good. I'm actually giving you that synopsis is making me want to pick up the sequel. And I think the audio just came out. So I might be reading that in December or early January because I really enjoyed that story. And moving on, we have Order of the Scorpions by Ivy Asher. That is also going in amazing. It is a wide choose dark fantasy romance, and it was completely addicting. So we were following this girl named Offset, and she wakes up in a prison cell completely naked, has no memory of who she is, what her name is, and she's taken to this interrogator who proceeds to torture her. And she's not really able to give any information because she doesn't remember who she is. And then a bunch of masked assassins show up, kill the guy that was torturing her, but leave her chained to the floor. So she eventually is given over to this assassin training camp where she is taught how to become a really good assassin in the hopes that she will eventually be bought by an assassin guild and be able to buy her freedom. And on the day that she is supposed to be purchased, she finds out the people buying her are actually those assassins in the mask that killed that guy in the very beginning of the book. So the whole story is essentially her romance with them, but also her trying to discover who she actually is. And more people need to talk about this book. I feel like I don't hear people talking about it, and it's so, so good. So yeah, that's definitely an amazing. And then we have, let's see, let me find From Blood and Ash. Okay. From Blood and Ash, I did a reread. I was doing a read-along with Tori from Novel Life, Issa from Fun Fantasy Books, and Hannah from Hannah Blackwell. And From Blood and Ash is still perfect. I love this book so much. It is just the perfect paranormal enemies to lovers. It has vampires. It has werewolves. It's just, I love it so much. so much. So we are following Poppy, who's the maiden. She's being raised in isolation, getting ready for this ritual known as the Ascension. She has no idea what it entails. And one day she sneaks out to the Red Pearl just to have some fun. She's in disguise, and she ends up having a spicy moment with Hawk, the newest member of the Rise Guard. And then soon after that, Hawk becomes her new personal guard, and the story goes from there. And it is everything. I will say, I'm about to talk about it, I liked From Blood and Ash. That's my favorite in the series, and as the series has progressed, I have liked the books less and less. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the series overall at this point. However, From Blood and Ash is part of the reason I started a booktube channel, so I love it. A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is the second book in that series. That is going to go into okay, because on my reread, I realized how ridiculous some of the scenes are. Like, there is a scene in here where there is a full-on battle going on, and our two main characters decide they are going to have spicy time in a random deserted carriage and then proceed with the battle. So I didn't love some parts of it, but overall it's still pretty good. Then we have The War of Two Queens. I'm also going to put this with okay. I didn't like this book for a completely different reason than the majority of people hated this book. The male narrator for the audiobook of this book, I despise. I'm very sorry if you like him or if he is watching this or anything like that. Something about his voice, he has the same exact voice in every single audiobook I've heard from him, and it just doesn't fit the character that he plays, or I feel like it doesn't fit the character. So I was not a fan. I also feel like because of this, I felt like the hero in this book lost a lot of his personality. But I was team joining, so that did not bug me at all. But yeah, there's the audiobook. Had I read this book physically, I probably would have given it amazing. It was just, I could not get past the narrator. And next up, we have Zodiac Academy 8. This is going to go in nope. I have no words. I loved the Zodiac Academy. I was obsessed when I first started. The writing is not the best. It's actually kind of poorly written, especially the first book. However, the characters and the romance in that series, from book 1 to book 5, kind of into book 6, it's just addicting. I love them so much, but this series has gotten dragged out way farther than I feel like it needed to go. And I try not to be negative on my channel, but this is one of the points that I will completely stand by. I just feel like this series needs to end. I am hoping this 9th book is absolutely amazing and sums up everything, and that they don't add more books, because if they continue putting out books, I'm going to DNF this series. They're just too long and they're too convoluted, and I'm not a fan anymore. But I do want to see how it ends. So hopefully the ending is amazing, but we will see. And next up, we have Love in a Time of a Zombie Apocalypse. This is also going into perfect. I love this book. It was one of my top 10 books of the year. It was almost my top, but Manacled just slightly beat it. Because Manacled has more... I just realized I was not in focus for a lot of this video. I apologize. Manacled has more of an intense romance, where Zombie Apocalypse, or Love in a Time of a Zombie Apocalypse, is a little bit more action heavy and has a lot more going on, I feel like, in terms of plot, where Manacled also has an amazing plot, but the romance is really like hard hitting. But this is another Draco Hermione fanfic. We are following the Wizarding world as a zombie virus is unleashed upon it. And it's Draco and Hermione trying to survive and find a cure. Also, the humans have realized that wizards exist, so there are dark wizards trying to kill the humans, and the humans are trying to kill all the wizards because they can't differentiate between dark wizards and not dark wizards. And it was really good. And I loved like the political intrigue, and it was just amazing. So highly recommend. You can find it on the website Archive of Our Own. And next up, we have A Soul of Blood and Ash. I thought I was going to hate this. I'm actually going to put this in amazing because it rekindled my love for Poppy and Hawk. I felt like I was really falling out of love with this series, and then I read this and I was reminded of why I loved these characters in the first place. So I really enjoyed A Soul of Blood and Ash, way more than I was expecting, so I was really happy. It was a pleasant surprise this year. Then we have Foxglove. This was one of my biggest disappointments of the year. I'm going to put this with not for me because I don't think the book was bad. I gave it 3 stars. It just wasn't nearly as interesting, I found, than Belladonna. Belladonna being the first book in the series. I loved Belladonna. That was one of my top books of 2022. And this just kind of fell flat. We were introduced to another POV. I didn't care about that POV. I didn't care about that romance. So yeah, it didn't work for me. I am going to read the third book. Hopefully I like the third book a little bit more, but we will see. Then we have A Fall of Ruin and Wrath. I am going to put this... It is somewhere between okay and amazing. I think I'm going to put it with amazing. This is the only J-Law book I've ever read that I wished it was longer. I feel like we weren't given quite enough information in terms of enough, not information, but like enough cute moments between the characters that I wanted them to be together. It just felt a little bit insta-love, but also insta-hate. If you're unfamiliar with the plot of Fall of Wrath and Ruin, I always say that name backwards. I don't know if I just messed it up again. But it is following this girl who has very intense intuition. And as long as she follows her intuition, she normally ends up pretty well off. But she ends up finding this god and she saves him, although her intuition is telling her kind of to stay away from him. And it's their romance. And I have to do a reread of it because I feel like I missed some parts of the world building because I know a lot of my friends really enjoyed this. So I will definitely be doing a reread really soon. I think I ended up rating it 4 stars. So solid start to a series. I'm very interested to see where it goes. And next up we have A Curse of Sorrows and Thorns. I am going to put this with okay, and that is only because it is unbelievably similar to From Blood and Ash. And it had the same female narrator. So the entire time I was reading this, or at least the first half of this book, I just kept picturing Poppy and Hawk, and I don't know why. So because of the similarities in writing, similarities in plot, and it had the same narrator, I wasn't as invested as I wanted to be because I kept comparing it to From Blood and Ash, except a more sped up version. However, I will be continuing with the series because I know Carrie absolutely loved it. And a lot of people are loving the pirate Viking romance that's set in the same world. But Carrie said, I have to read this series first before I jump into that, or else I'm going to be spoiled. So I will definitely be reading that in 2024. Oh, then we have A Curse for True Love. And this was such a disappointment for me. I am going to put this with not for me. I rated it. I ended up, I think, like 2.53 stars. I loved The Ballad of Never After, which I actually think is on this list. Actually, let's go in order, guys. So first, Once Upon a Broken Heart is the first book in that series. It is a YA fantasy romance series. We are following Evangeline Fox, and she lives in a world where it is known you do not make deals with fates. However, her best friend is about to marry her stepsister, and she has a huge crush on her best friend. So she ends up running to Jax, the Fate of Broken Hearts, and begging him, please, to stop the wedding between her best friend and her stepsister. And he says he will do it if she agrees to give him 3 kisses from the men of his choosing, and she does, and the story goes from there. It is so whimsical. It feels like stepping into a fairy tale. The first book is a little bit of a setup book, so I'm going to put the first book at amazing. The second book, The Ballad of Never After, is one of my top reads of the year. It is going in perfect. I love this book. There is so much longing, so much angst, and it is so, you know when you have those books and you're just like, please kiss already? That was this entire book. Like, I just loved the romance. And then we had A Curse of True Love, and I feel like it was not a very good conclusion to the story. There's a lot of things that are left unresolved. It is very open to interpretation, and I was just not a fan. So that is going to go with not for me. I still think you should read the series if you haven't picked it up yet. Those first 2 books are absolutely magical. It's just the third book was a little bit of a letdown for me. And then we have Iron Flame, which is the sequel to Fourth Wing, and that is going to go with okay. I rated it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I think that the author spent a lot of time setting up things for continuing the series, so I think it has a little bit of second book syndrome, but I love the characters, I love the dragons, I love the banter back and forth. I was laughing so much throughout this book because of some of the quick comments from certain dragons, and I love the romance. So I enjoyed it. I'm going to put it with okay, but I definitely preferred Fourth Wing over Iron Flame. And unfortunately, my camera died, and I did not notice it, so I just kept going, and I had to reset. So I believe we are at Dawn of Onyx. So I guess you guys just saw where I put down Onyx. I absolutely loved it. I'm going to put it with amazing. I read this as part of a read-along I did with Hannah from the channel Hannah Blackwell and then Tiff from Tiff Talks Pages. And this is an adult fantasy romance. It is predictable, but it's also really fun. We're following this girl who has the ability to heal people, and she ends up being captured by this rival community, and they force her to heal their soldiers. So she's kind of kept as like a prisoner, but then she meets a certain stranger, and the dynamic begins to change, and it goes from there. So like I said, very predictable, but also very enjoyable, and I will definitely be continuing with the series in 2024. And then we have The Witch Collector, which is actually a little bit of a letdown for me. I think I'm going to put this, I originally had this in okay, but I actually think I'm going to put it in not for me, just because I think people will adore this book. But personally, I just didn't care about the romance. It felt a little forced. We're following this girl that lives in this community where every I think it's like 7 or 8 years or so, a witch collector comes and takes a witch from the community and they are never seen again. So our main character's sister was one of these witches taken last year, so she wants revenge against the witch collector and the Frost King. And it's a traveling story with our main character and the witch collector trying to get to the Frost King, and they slowly start to like form a relationship. But it was very atmospheric and the magic was very interesting. I just didn't like the romance. So unfortunately, I probably won't be continuing with that series. Yeah, and next up we have Anastasia, which I actually adored. I love this book so much. It is one of my new favorite fantasy romances. I just feel like the world was so immersive, and Sophie Lark just did such an amazing job with fantasy romance. So I will say it is unlike her Mafia and like spicier romance series. It is very slow paced. It takes a very long time to get going, but it is totally worth it. The payoff at the end is just, it is perfection. But I do agree, the beginning is a little bit boring. It takes a while to get going. But overall, so worth a read. I absolutely loved it. Then we have Guild. So this is actually supposed to represent the entire series because I reread the series this year. I am going to put it with amazing just because of how much I hated that first book when I first tried reading it. So if you're unfamiliar with the Play to Prisoner series, we are following RN, who is essentially Midas's gilded pet. Midas being kind of like the original King Midas, where whatever he touches turns to gold. So he has gold-touched RN, and he keeps her in this cage in his castle, where all she does is really drink wine, and just all she cares about is Midas. She has no sort of autonomy. That is until she has to leave her gilded cage, and things start to change. So I just love how much RN grows as a character throughout the series. There is also a romance in here that is so epic, and gave me like the ACOTAR vibes, and I cannot wait for the next book. So unlike Zodiac Academy, where when I heard they were adding more books to the series, I was really annoyed. Raven Kennedy just announced there's going to be more books in the Guild series, and I think that is a great call just because the ending of the last book it just left so much stuff open. Like, she can go so many different avenues with this next book. I'm so excited. So the most recent Play to Prisoner book did release physically, but the audiobook probably isn't releasing until the summer, which is very, very sad for me. But overall, I love this series. I do plan on doing another reread, and I might do a recap video if you guys still want that. I know a lot of people have already read the book physically, but if you're waiting for the audio and you want a recap, let me know and I will work on it. Okay, and then we have A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. This is going to go with okay. This book is representing both A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows and the second book. The first book, I liked the plot and the premise. However, I don't think it was executed very well. So we are following this girl who was born with a birthmark that designates her to have very powerful blood. So her mother made a pact with the Queen of the Fae that when she comes of age, her daughter will marry the Prince of the Fae and thereby give him her blood to help like power him up and protect the realm. Well, our main character does not want to marry the Prince of the Fae, and she really doesn't want to marry the Prince of the Fae when she meets his brother, who is this like dark, handsome, scarier version, and there's a little bit of a love triangle, and I was loving the story. Then the second half of this book is just smut. And I love smut. I love spicy fantasy romance. It's my thing. It's what I read most often. However, this smut came out of nowhere, and it was just one spicy seed after another, and I wanted to know what was going to happen with the story, and I've never experienced that with a fantasy romance before, ever. I will say the second book I actually preferred over the first. The second book had more of a plot happening. There's also a bit of a found family feel, and I'm excited to read the third book. However, I know a lot of my friends have DNF'd this series, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I will definitely be continuing because so far it's okay. It's pretty okay. And then we have Between Wrath and Mercy, which I swore I read in 2022, but according to Goodreads, I read this year. This is also going in perfect. This is the first fantasy romance I've read with mature characters and older characters where they actually make mature decisions and use critical thinking skills, and I appreciate that. So we're following this woman who's trapped in a loveless marriage. However, she does have a daughter, and her daughter is her whole world. That is until her daughter is stolen, and our main character has to beg the bloody Prince Rainier for his help in getting her daughter back. And they have a bit of a history. And the ending of this book was insane. I have had the second book. I have it physically, and I have the audio. I just haven't picked it up yet. But that will definitely be read either in January or February, because I'm very interested to see what happens with the second book, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. All right, the final two. So we have Vicious Bonds by Shanora Williams. This is actually going to go in Nope. This is one of my least favorite books of the year, and I feel so sad saying that because I actually love Shanora Williams' writing, and I love her romances. I just feel like as far as fantasy romance went, this wasn't as well executed as I would hope. It had a lot of influences from Peaky Blinders, and you can definitely tell that, and I love Peaky Blinders. Cillian Murphy is like my favorite actor of all time. He's insanely talented and also attractive, and I love him. But this story just, it wasn't memorable. I didn't love the main character, and it kind of just felt like a romance that was set in a world that there's magic. I don't know how to explain it. Personally, it just didn't work for me. So that is a Nope. And when I made this template, I obviously thought I was going to be finished with the Hurricane Wars, and I still have 2 hours left of the audiobook, so I don't want to put this anywhere. So I'm going to put it with okay. Honestly, I have never been so confused on a book. Where I'm at now, I am 3/4 of the way done it, and I don't know if I hate this book or I love this book. It is so odd. So this is very heavily influenced by Star Wars. Apparently it started out as Reylo like fanfic, and we're following these two people. One is a girl that is an orphan, but she has this magical light ability that was said to have been wiped out. And then we were following a dark prince who wants to kill her because someone with a light ability wiped out his entire family, or most of his family and his people when he was younger. And they meet on the battlefield but aren't able to kill each other because they have this like connection. And then eventually things start to change politically, and there's an arranged marriage, and it's a lot. And I can tell that it's definitely referencing Star Wars. Like, there are some parts. I just feel like I wanted a lot more out of the world building. Like, I don't really understand the dynamics of this whole war, besides the fact that there are just these two people that really want to keep killing each other. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. I like the romance, but also I don't know what's going on. So it might just be a me thing. But anyway, I will explain more on my thoughts, and I will give my rating in my December wrap-up, because I will be finished this, with the Hurricane Wars by the end of tonight. I have no idea how I want to read it. But yeah, those are all of my fantasy romance reads that I read in 2023. So thank you guys so much for watching. Alright guys, so that is it for my fantasy romance tier rank. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know down in the comments below what is the best fantasy romance you read in 2023. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!